If you drive a truck or bus in Florida, your chauffeur's license soon will be invalid. Most of you will need the new commercial driver's license.
The new license? Do I need one?
Yes, if your truck weighs 26,000 pounds or more.
What about me?
Yes, if your school bus carries 11 passengers or more, including yourself.
Me too?
Yes, if your vehicle carries 16 or more people, including yourself.
What about me?
Yes, if you transport placarded hazardous materials, no matter what your truck weighs. If you drive a truck or bus and presently hold a Florida chauffeur's license, you will have to take a test. Get the facts in advance. Prepare for the test. Unless you're properly licensed, you may just disappear from the road. For information, contact your local driver license office today.
Are you ready for this? There's a lot to scream about these days. Take your job, the recession, or the kids. As reporter John Pertzborn shows us, maybe you just ought to go ahead and let it all out.
There are so many problems in today's world, sometimes you can't help blowing up about.
But my boyfriend just gets on my nerves.
What else? High taxes?
So many silly excuses I hear for blowing red lights and stop signs around town. You know they're guilty, but they try to come up with some kind of excuse.
So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and scream. It'll make you feel better.
Oh, please, I haven't screamed since Vietnam. Ah! Ah!
Robert Fishbone can relate. That's why he created this art that inflates. It's called the Scream, an idea he borrowed from Edvard Munch's famous 1893 painting.
I think that in the serious vein, the scream represents people's inability to communicate something and be heard.
You see, Robert believes everyone can relate to primeval things like screams and drum beats, so he had 12,000 of these blow-up beauties made. He plans to sell them throughout the U.S. to help ease life's tension.
Well, I think that it can understand you when no one else does. That's basically what it can do, you know. And I think that every psychiatrist should have one of these in their office, because if a patient walks in and sees this, they'd realize their life is not that bad, really.
Okay, I'm John Pertzborn for NBC News.
So how much do those inflatable Scream dolls cost anyway? About $25, and they're sold in many museum gift shops around the country.
I really couldn't find anything that really worked or looked natural. And until I seen a commercial on Hair Club for Men, and I thought, well, why don't I send away for the brochure?
Our booklet contains a comprehensive discussion about hair loss, Hair Club's non-surgical strand-by-strand method, and our latest innovation, the polyfuse method, which literally fuses top-quality human hair to your own hair.
When I went to the Hair Club and I got my system, it really gave me more ways to be able to do my hair, and I could do it in more of a 90s fashion, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable when you're in clubs and, you know, wanting to ask people to dance, and you don't want to look like you're 40 when you're 24, 23 years old.
Once I had the process done, now I can be spontaneous. I can swim when I want to and not worry about my hair, towel dry my hair, get out, catch some rays, and the wind doesn't affect me anymore. I don't mind the wind at all.
And by the way, I'm not only the Hair Club president, but I'm also a client.
If we each save one life, if we each change one heart, if we all take the time and we all do our part, we can save South Florida, we can turn back the tide. It's a matter of life, it's a matter of pride. One Everglade, one bird free to fly, one beach, one tree, one reef, one sky. We can save South Florida. We can turn back the tide. It's a matter of life. It's a matter of pride. We can save South Florida. It's a matter of pride.
morning, I'm Sandy Gilmore, and this is NBC News Nightside. Israeli negotiators are calling their first face-to-face talks with Syrian officials frustrating. After 5 hours of talks, the Syrians continued insisting on complete Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories. However, they feel good about their meetings with the Palestinians. Those talks were termed by both sides as good and businesslike. Even U.S. Secretary of State James Baker was pleased.
But in terms of a start, I have to tell you that I was very pleasantly surprised. Number one, by the fact that they met for as long as they did.
Both sides are even saying talks could resume in a matter of weeks, though they cannot agree on where. And the Palestinians don't think the Israeli-Syrian deadlock will hurt the peace process.
They didn't have much to do with substance, and therefore I don't think that they will have any negative effect on the process as a whole, because the Syrians themselves say they are committed to the process.
President Bush's chief of staff says he and other White House officials have had no contact with the corrupt BCCI bank now under investigation. Former Sununu assistant Ed Rogers recently accepted and then returned a $600,000 legal retainer from a Saudi involved with the bank. But Sununu says Rogers did not ask the White House for any favors.
No, he did not. And in fact, a letter from Boyd and Gray, the White House counsel, and from the Assistant Attorney General at the Justice Department has made it very, very clear that they have examined the situation and that there was no wrongdoing by Ed Rogers before or after or by anyone, in fact, at the White House on that situation.
We'll have more of that interview with John Sununu later in our broadcast. Yet another photo has surfaced claiming to show an American MIA alive in Vietnam. A Colorado State University forensics expert who examined the photo says it may be legitimate. Jim Hanchett reports.
There is so much evidence of death in Dr. Michael Charney's office. Now the forensics expert says he has proof of life. The proof is in photos that Charney says indicate a missing Navy lieutenant shot down during the Vietnam War is alive. This photo was taken of Californian Larry Stevens in 1969, shortly before he disappeared in Laos. This photo has just been smuggled out of Vietnam. Charney says it too shows Stevens.
You're outlining all of the features of the face. You see, where the computer does it with an accuracy of 1/100 of an inch.
Using a process called computer digitization, the outlines of the facial features in both photos were superimposed. Charney says in every aspect they match.
The upper lip, the lower bottom of the lower lip, and the parting of the lips, and the ears.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon will only say they've seen this photo and they're investigating. In Fort Collins, Colorado, I'm Jim Hanchett for NBC News.
The Senate Select Committee will hold hearings on POW and MIA issues on Tuesday. In Kuwait, all but 4 of 732 burning oil wells have been put out. 27 international firefighting teams are winding down operations after 8 months of work. The mammoth job was expected to take 2 years. This Wednesday, Kuwaiti officials, oil executives, and firefighters plan to cap the last well in a ceremony that will finally put an end to the thick black smoke. 15 months after the slayings of 5 college students in Florida, a grand jury will begin hearing evidence against the prime suspect on Tuesday. Danny Harold Rowling, described as a Louisiana drifter, is accused in the killings that shrouded the University of Florida in fear. Rowling already faces 4 life terms for a series of holdups and robberies. In Minnesota, the worst storm of the century brought even that snow capital to a halt. But not for long. Even with extra snow on top of the 2 feet they've already received, Minnesotans were ready to dig, plow, and shovel their way out. And if they couldn't find their cars under the drifts, there were other options like skis, sleighs, and snowmobiles. An old Campbell's soup factory in Camden, New Jersey, went down yesterday.
The guy yelled fire.
It took thousands of dynamite charges to turn the complex into rubble and dust. In its place will go a new $65 million aerospace facility for General Electric. Campbell's Soup had used the old factory since the 1880s. I'm Sandy Gilmore, and this is NBC Nightside.
Places of beauty, places of intrigue, as seen from the decks of the world's best cruise line. Come, feel the splendor of the world from aboard the ships of Holland America.
Would you just look at what we get from America's soil and water? Get your hands on protecting our future. We owe it to our children.
Thank you, Grandpa.
Call us.
Hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets of Los Angeles today, their goal to raise money for people with AIDS and to rally in support of gay rights. The so-called AIDS-a-thon was organized by 25 groups of AIDS activists. They say the number of people with the deadly disease is growing. Organizers say more than 7,000 people signed up to walk, run, bike, or even roller skate in this 10K race. 5 presidents and 6 first ladies get together today in Simi Valley, California, to mark the opening of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. The building cost $57 million and contains documents from Reagan's years in the White House. Security is tight with President Bush and 4 living ex-presidents expected. Already 1 man has been arrested for allegedly plotting an assassination of Mr. Bush. Music fans from all over the United States came to San Francisco's Golden Gate Park yesterday for a memorial service to honor legendary rock promoter Bill Graham. Some of the industry's biggest names performed before a crowd of 300,000, including Santana, Jackson Browne, and Aaron Neville. Bill Graham was killed in a helicopter crash 9 days ago. Graham spearheaded the birth of the San Francisco Sound in the late 1960s. And now, here's a look at the nation's weather.
And good morning. Pre-dawn hours are certainly cold throughout most of the nation. The satellite view over the east is showing a cloud cover along the east coast, stretching from Maine through the Carolinas, the mid-Atlantic states, and into Florida. Some scattered rain showers across Florida and some snow showers across the Great Lakes, where Sheboygan, Michigan, earlier on Sunday picked up about 5 inches of snow. Generally clear skies throughout the Tennessee Valley and the mid-Mississippi Valley. The wider view showing you cloud cover throughout the Intermountain West and the Great Basin. And throughout California, mostly clear skies in Southern California. And the Pacific Northwest is seeing some rain showers moving in. That'll turn over to some freezing rain, it looks like, overnight tonight. Some cold temperatures for lows by dawn. In the west, up and down the west coast, it'll only be in the 30s and 40s, quite chilly throughout the Great Basin. The Intermountain West will be cold as well, but not quite as cold as last night. By dawn on Monday, we'll see temperatures throughout the east as well. Very cold, unseasonably so for this time of year. Highs on Monday, we'll see afternoon temperatures only in the 30s and 20s around the Great Lakes and throughout most of the Northeast, and cold all the way down into the Gulf Coast states as well. Quite balmy throughout California in the 60s and 70s there. Forecast map for Monday showing high pressure dominating the east as well as the west. For Nightside, I'm Tom Kirai.
Coming up in sports, the Washington Redskins get a scare.
Here's an opportunity to receive a free copy of William F. Buckley's historic Agenda for the 90s.
Hi, I'm Bill Buckley. You may know me through my television show Firing Line or my newspaper columns or maybe one of my Blackfoot Oaks spy novels. But you ought to know about my magazine, National Review. A National Review gives you insights into current events and information about important issues from a decidedly different set of priorities. It gives you a point of view that may very well be like your own.
I like it because it cuts through the nonsense that normally surrounds most political issues with simple, common sense. And of course, I love the humor. It's a very funny magazine.
When you get National Review, you'll have news and opinion you can't find anywhere else. You can't find National Review on every newsstand, so this may be your only chance to get a copy.
Call this toll-free number now and we'll send you absolutely free Agenda for the 90s. For a trial subscription to National Review, call 1-800-643-3000. That's 1-800-643-3000.
It can be hard for one person to keep up with all the NFL action on a Sunday afternoon, but here's Ned Smith with all the best plays and all the final scores.
Vice President Dan Quayle even had tickets for today's matchup between Houston and the undefeated Redskins in Washington. He saw a good one, game tied 13-all in overtime until Chip Lohmiller drills this 41-yard field goal to keep the Redskins unbeaten. They drill the Oilers 16-13 and are now 9-0. In Atlanta, the 49ers led the Falcons 10-7 with time running out. Atlanta's Billy Joe Tolliver heaves the Hail Mary into a pack of players at the goal line. Michael Haynes will come down with it, and Atlanta comes up with a 14-10 victory over San Francisco. One Hail Mary deserves another, this time from the Jets-Packers game. Last play before halftime, New York's Ken O'Brien with the long heave. The ball caroms off two players right into Chris Burkett's hands for the 50-yard touchdown. The Jets go on to win in overtime, 19-16. Also, Chicago doubled up Detroit. Buffalo nips New England. Minnesota thumps Tampa Bay. Dallas pounds Phoenix 27-7. New Orleans romped over the Rams. Miami barely keeps the Colts winless. Denver put away Pittsburgh, and the Bengals win their first. In the NHL, with Chicago hosting Minnesota, let's go ringside, or ice side. Basil Peluso and Mike McRae going at it. A couple of nice lefts, a few rights. Big night for Chicago's Chris Chelios. He scored 2 first-period goals. The game went to overtime where no one scored. It ends in a 4-all tie. The streets of the Big Apple were crowded today as 26,000 runners began the New York City Marathon. Mexico's Salvador Garcia and Scotland's Liz McCaughlin were the winners. And the richest payout in golf was at the Tour Championship in Pinehurst, North Carolina. The Walrus, Craig Stadler, who hasn't won in 7 years, bags the putt on the second hole of sudden death to defeat Russ Cochran to win $360,000. That's sports. I'm Ned Smith for Nightside.
Look, I'm eating apples again, thanks to Super Polygrip with its Ultra Hold formula.
Now in an easy-to-use pump, it holds dentures ultra tight. Ultra Hold formula, the best grip Polygrip has ever made.
Pain from just one sensitive tooth can start the domino effect. Pain can make you stop brushing, lead to plaque buildup, gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Sensodyne toothpaste helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
Corporate crooks won't have it easy under new sentencing rules. The crackdown on white-collar crime tops today's business report. Here's CNBC's Dean Shepard.
Taking a look at issues in business today, new sentencing guidelines have been adopted for white-collar crimes. Corporate criminals can expect to serve longer sentences and pay stiffer fines under these new rules. But as John Metaxas reports, the sentences may be stiffer, but they may not be fairer.
Individuals can be sent to prison for their crimes. But what's the proper punishment for a corporation that pollutes the environment or defrauds investors? The new guidelines will help judges answer that question. The penalty for certain crimes will go as high as $290 million. But corporations that put compliance programs in place and cooperate with the government can decrease their fines by as much as 97%.
This law is really a carrot and stick approach. The guidelines contain incentives for corporations to take actions now so that they can mitigate whatever punishment they may face if they're faced with the unhappy prospect of being prosecuted.
Corporate law firms are aggressively marketing compliance plans for their clients. And one study has found that America's largest companies have anticipated the guidelines, already putting ethics programs in place. But critics contend that allowing companies to decrease their liability by such a great amount sends the wrong message to corporate America.
For the corporation, there is a strong incentive today to have the compliance program in place, but then once you have that in place, it's not going to be a very serious penalty to the corporation if a lower echelon employee does violate the law on behalf of the corporation. And the lower echelons may well recognize that.
The law does not apply to offenses committed before November 1st. But Salomon Brothers, in dealing with its Treasury bid scandal, has followed the logic of the guidelines, revamping compliance with securities laws and informing the public of its actions. Steps smaller companies with less sophisticated legal staffs may not be taking.
We're going to see harsher penalties for small companies, more lenient penalties for large public companies, and that's the reverse of the usual logic of deterrence.
Logical or not, knowing about the sentencing guidelines should be a top priority for America's corporations. For NBC News, I'm John Metaxas.
Well, that's the business news. I'm Dean Shepard for Nightside.
Every kid has things they're good in, like math or art or science, and things that we are not so good in, like maybe history. But you can't just stick to what comes easy because you won't make it in school or in life. And the real world is getting more and more complex and more competitive every day. So keep on working on the tricky stuff, the tough stuff, the technical stuff, and you'll get it. You'll get ahead.
This week starts the year-long countdown to the 1992 elections and the startup of President Bush's re-election campaign. White House Chief of Staff John Sununu will certainly have a pivotal role planning the president's strategy. Governor Sununu is with us now from Washington, and thank you, Governor, for joining us.
Thank you very much for letting me be a part of your inaugural show, and let me start by wishing you very, very well with this new format, new show.
Thank you very much. Let's start with George Bush's chances for re-election next year. The election's almost exactly 1 year away. Is his re-election assured?
Now, I think any election in the United States has to be anticipated as being the kind of a process you go through where things get closer and closer the closer you come to election. And then we anticipate a tough election. We always anticipate a tough election. And we're going to do everything to make sure that we keep whatever margin we have and build on it. But the fact is that every election is tough and has to be treated that way.
Well, let's be realistic about the economy. Surely that's your biggest concern. White House officials and the president himself have said that the recession is over. Most people think it's getting worse. An NBC News poll shows that by 2 to 1, people think this country's on the wrong track. How much does that concern you? And do you agree or disagree with the 2 to 1 majority in this country who tell NBC News that George Bush is doing a poor job handling the economy?
Well, you know, economists have technical ways of looking at the start and end of recessions, but that ought not to confuse us when you're looking at the fact that there are some people out there who really have needs and have problems, and the president is very concerned about those. Of course, we would like to see the economy growing. We would like to see more jobs being created. But you have the problem that you have a Congress that has failed to pass for the last 3 years the proposals the president's laid out in each one of his State of the Union addresses in 1989, 90, 91, and in the budget packages he sent up that would create incentives for investment that create jobs. You cannot create jobs without investment. The Soviet Union knows that. Eastern Europe knows that. The rest of the world knows that.
But, Governor, it's not just the